this is so unique to Metronomics. Lots of people talk about it, but nobody talks about the step-by-step methodology to get you there.
Yeah.
We do this.
Welcome to Tip Top Grow Up Your Business with Metronomics. Join me, Shannon Byrne Susko, and Metronomics Certified Coach, Jed Roberts.
We'll be talking to business thought leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and business team coaches who have all taken the journey to grow up their businesses to their tip top.
We'll be sharing strategies, systems, stories, on how you can grow your company up at the speed you want.
If you're searching for your path to the tip top and feel your time is running out, then this podcast is for you. So I'm really excited about this episode of the Metronomics podcast. So today I'm talking to Damian Byrne, and the reason I'm excited about today is we're talking about accountability in leadership teams, accountability in businesses. So I think it's going to be a great episode. Damian, how are you?
Very well, Jed. How are you?
I am very good. Looking forward to this. Looking forward to all of our chats. We always have really good conversations. Now, Damian, you really focus on accountability in your coaching practice, and I think there's lots of tools and techniques that you use in your practice that we'll probably talk about today. And I think that's going to be really interesting to the people that listen to this podcast. So, when I reached out to you to do a podcast episode, why did you choose the topic of accountability?
Well, I think if you have a business that is, I guess, going for growth, and when we talk about growth, we're certainly with you and I, we're talking about 20% and above. I know you and I have recently talked about the 30%. If you're going to reach any of those sorts of rates, milestones, you will not be able to accomplish those things unless that you have created somewhat of a circle of accountability amongst the senior leadership team. And I think where we start our practices is about execution, and we will not get there without that circle of accountability being in place.
So what is accountability? If you were to break it down, how would you characterize accountability?
Well, it's the ability to be trusted. You say you're going to do something at a particular time, in a particular way, with a particular result, and you deliver on all those three things. I think that is not only a trust-building behavior, but it is full accountability for what you've agreed to do.
So a lot of people confuse accountability and responsibility. What's the difference? Does it matter?
Well, I think many people can be responsible for a single goal, but only one person can be accountable for the fruition of that goal being accomplished. So, I love it when I'm in a meeting and somebody goes, yeah, we'll both take that. I'm like, I don't think you will. So, if two people are accountable, nobody is accountable. You just need one person at the lead all the time so that when the others are looking back and saying, who's got that? They're not saying what people have that. They really want to know who. And then, back to that, the statement I just said about trust. It's amazing who puts their hand up and who agrees to that hand when it goes up, because that person has a track record of accountability and a track record of being trusted.
And you often see that really early on in an engagement where, the same people in a leadership team put their hands up and the same people in a leadership team don't put their hands up. So there's this process of really learning what accountability is. And some people get there and some people don't. And if they're not going to be accountable on a leadership team, they're probably not going to be around for too long.
And they can be accountable, they can be trustworthy, and still not be around very long, because there's not only that ability to be held accountable and to be accountable and deliver, there is also a measure of strategic thinking that we all must take ourselves out of on execution and put our trustworthiness as thoughtful leaders forward as well. So we build trust through accountability, and then we also become trustworthy in our thought process going forward. So you can be amazing at accountability and still not be on the senior leadership team, but it is equally important to be trustworthy and to be able to be held accountable at any level in the organization.
So some people make the distinction of accountability and responsibility as being, accountability is where the buck stops. No, but you don't necessarily have to be responsible as well. You might have delegated that responsibility to other people in your team or even other people in other teams. So the two are not necessarily the one and the same. The way I see it is you can be accountable and responsible. You can just be accountable, but then you need to know who you've delegated the responsibility to or who has taken that responsibility. Or you could just be responsible, and you could be one of several people being responsible as well. Is that how you see the distinction?
I do. And, I'll regularly get into, call it discussions, maybe even arguments with clients about who should take the accountability on a particular effort priority, as we would call them. And they'll go, well, that person has the most knowledge, or that person is going to do the most. I'm going, well, I'm okay with the most knowledge, but if you're just talking about do the most, that's we're talking about responsibilities and sub priorities. I will regularly say, look, I can be held accountable. I know nothing about that. I will assemble the proper team. I will hold them accountable to progress meetings showing up. We will have milestones in place, and I will have the best thought leadership to get that priority done. And then they start going, oh, accountable is the ability to get it done. And I said, and the best leader will probably do very little, and they will still be accountable.
So they're counting. They're counting towards completion, counting towards progress, making sure that the milestones are achieved, making sure that the team is doing what they need to be doing at the right time.
It's no different than a great project manager coming in to get something that is not within their area of expertise across the line. They're simply going to milestone it out, have some kind of Gantt chart, week by week, who's going to do what, when they're going to do it. And, I love the goal, the author I'm thinking of, I can never say his name, Ari. You say it because you're better at it.
I always get his first name wrong, but his surname is Goldblatt. Yep.
Yes, thank you. And, it really, he's written so many good things about project planning, project management, inventory and what would you call it? Who's the
theory of constraints?
Who's
the theory of constraints, yeah.
Theory of constraints, thank you. And, it really is, the accountable person has to put that all into check and balances and run the plan. The responsible people just simply need to get their areas done. And look, I could spend all day watching people go through this process and then understanding the difference between accountable and responsible. And you articulated quite well. Responsible has to do something. Accountable just has to make sure it's done.
And in theory, as you just mentioned, you can do nothing outside of make sure it's happening.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're not ringing the bell when it's not on track, then you're not being accountable.
Look, and then you're not building trust with your teammates.
Yeah. And I've had a few CEOs say to me, well, what about if someone's accountable, but they don't ring the bell because they don't want to be open and honest about the fact that they're not on track? And my answer there is, well, that sounds like a core values problem to me, not an accountability problem. You've got the wrong person in that seat. Yeah. And then they should absolutely not be in that seat for much longer unless they can learn it pretty quick.
I put my teams through the software that we use, Metronomics Growth Systems, and there's a number of progress measurements you can use, whether it's percentage, customized balance, roll up sub priorities, action item based. And I think the very best ones, and this kind of comes from pushing a team through sprint lanes on a corporate quarterly priority. I think they are really well done when somebody writes a priority. There's, say, I don't know, it could be 13 weeks of rolling up sub priorities. It could be 13 weeks of action items, but it is a week by week measurement, a project plan where you can't fudge the outcomes. The action items are either checked off or they're not checked off. So therefore, I don't have somebody looking at, a percentage-based priority or a time-based priority, simply moving across until when they think like, okay, the team's not going to bother me now because the priority is green, where the team has every right to bother you when you don't check off the action items at a point in time when you said they would be checked off. Because as you know, a number of other priorities will be dominoes in a sequence as we move toward a quarterly measurement, an annual measurement, or even a 3-year highly achievable goal measurement. And that daily action of checking that one little action item off is paramount to the success of the whole company. And this is, we're getting back to that circle of accountability. This is where you're starting to go, look, no soldiers. Everybody is a general, and you must click off on time, on budget, so we can get the ROI that we're investing in here. And I think that then you take that back and you report back to a weekly meeting, and somebody goes, it's checked off or it's not checked off. The not checked off becomes the action item where we all get to hold everybody accountable. And that is a plus or a minus, pat on the back, or how can I help? And those are the discussion items that we have to have.
That's really important. This is, if we're not on track, how can we help you get back on track? Do you need support? Do you need more resources? This is not about finger pointing or blame. Absolutely.
When you talk about finger pointing or blame, or somebody that's not willing to bring up that they are not on track, well, we don't have a foundation of trust to begin with, because remember, trust is given and taken. If I'm in a position of trust on the senior leadership team and I have a track record of building that trust, then I have no problem going, guys, I'm in trouble. I need your help. Rather than having to be asked, hey, Damian, do you need help? You look like you're a little behind. I'm like, no, everything's okay. It probably isn't okay if you're asking. And I should be thankful that you reached out. And I should therefore take you up on your offer of assistance, as long as we're not breaking somebody else's accountability with your time not being available.
I often see particularly early on in an engagement where we're going through progress and we're not on track and no one's saying anything. And I often throw the question out there to the room, well, why isn't anyone saying anything when we're not on track here? Yeah, it's clear we're not on track and no one's asking why that is and what we need to do to get back on track. And that's a real sign of a non-accountable behavior within a leadership team.
I guess you're even, we're getting a little bit outside of accountability while staying inside the topic. That to me would be a sign of a dysfunctional senior leadership team. And, the very first thing that we want to do as coaches is make sure that we are working with an A-player senior leadership team, and their ability to act in trusting manners with each other is most likely built between A, being vulnerable, but B, delivering things when they said they're going to do it. The speed of trust clearly talks about, the best way to build trust is say you're going to do something and then actually do it. And, are we talking about accountability? That's exactly what we're talking about.
We're walking up the 5 dysfunctions of a team pyramid, aren't we? If you haven't got trust, then you're not going to have that rigorous debate, that conflict, that constructive conflict. And if you haven't got that, you're not going to get the commitment you need as individuals and leaders. And if you haven't got the commitment, then you don't get accountability. And without accountability, you don't get the results you're looking for.
Yeah, I was working with a client just the other day, and this is a very good client. They are very good at setting objectives and goals. They're thinking about 3 hags and going, look, it's not a 3 hag anymore. And I think I've told you the story already. It's a 32-month hag, and they're getting worried this far out that they may or may not make their projections, and they're having good, honest discussions. And one of the leaders, on an annual number said, well, I never agreed to that number in the first place. I'm like, whoa, hold it now. We were all in that meeting together. We had a rigorous debate before we put that number up. And now the number is yours. And you're saying you didn't agree to it? We should have had that conversation a long time ago, because we are deep into it. So the reverse of all that, the senior leadership team now has to say, how can we get that on the table so that we will be successful for our 3 hag?
Do you explicitly go around the room? I mean, I often go around a room and explicitly look for I'm in, thumbs up, hell yeah. I need some sort of sign, either audible or visual, that they're in and that they have committed to the priority of the target, whatever it is we're talking about.
Do I do it explicitly? Probably not. Especially with this particular team, I thought that they were close enough, and I thought they were in player leadership team enough that the simple idea that the person who was accountable wrote it, that was a sure sign that the number was in play. And I have since heard that it is completely in play, except for the person who actually wrote it and owns it. And I'm like, oh, you know what? You didn't ask for help. You should have asked for help.
Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get informed of future episodes. Damian, there's a quote I read recently about accountability. Accountability, like rigor and discipline, is like catnip to high-performing employees. Do you agree with that?
100%.
Okay. What does it do to null?
If I were to articulate that quote in Metronomics terms, I'd say A players want to be measured.
Yeah.
They want to show up. They actually kind of like bragging about the results. And so if we have a team full of A players, and by the way, you can't have A players, they're not only going to perform well, but they get along with people well. They have EQ. They have connected with the core values behavior of the entire team. So you don't just get to show up and go, I'm an A player. I get everything I've done, that I accept doing done on time, on budget, because there's those types of players that go, and then they start teasing the other people, and you didn't. Those are just wrecking balls.
Yep.
What I want to do is have my stuff done on time, on budget. And I do like going, look, I'm good. I'm a great part of this team. Who needs help?
Yeah.
The next person out of next word out of somebody's mouth who's highly accomplished, who has got all their stuff done on time, on budget, all the time, is who can I help? That's an A player.
Where do you apply accountability within your practice? And I'm sort of thinking back to a book I published middle of last year. And chapter 2 is all about clarity of expectations, which is another way of really framing accountability. And in there, I'm very clear that accountability is about priorities. It's about metrics. It's about decisions in meetings. It's about actions that you come up with in meetings. But it's also about accountability for functions and roles. Do you apply accountability outside of those areas also?
Like, are you talking about inside my own practice?
Yes. When you work with your clients, yeah.
So I usually have some sort of core values discussion prior to taking a client. And you and I have had these conversations about who our core clients might be. Because I think there needs to be a very substantial core values fit between the coach and the client, so that before we even begin off on this coaching relationship, and it certainly is a 50-50 give-take relationship, that I want to make sure that a couple of my core values are aligned in particular. And my last one is this tough tenacity, where in my life, if I say I'm going to do something, and I have committed publicly to do that with you or with anybody else that, might have some sort of insights into my life, that I am going to get that done come hell or high water. And sometimes I would say that that's a fault because I take it too far. If I didn't put a very good finish line on what the goal was, then I keep doing the goal to the end, and there might not ever be an end. That becomes a fault. And that's a fault of writing a poor priority. So I think it's really important to align personality-wise with whoever it is that you're coaching. And then, I don't want to be the accountability mechanism ever. If I'm with those people, I'm probably not ever going to have to be. Would I creep into those bounds? I think a little bit. I think I'd say, hey, you said you're going to do this, and you said you're going to do this on time. It's not. Did we miswrite the priority, or did you let down on the accountability? And I think it's more of a question than me being, the accountability police.
So as a coach, you're taking the position that accountability should be within the leadership team. And I guess really our role is to hold the CEO to account, not necessarily the leadership team, because that's the CEO's role.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do one-on-ones with your CEOs as a way of enforcing that accountability and holding their feet to the fire, as you go through the quarter?
I do one-on-ones with my CEOs. I don't think it's perceived by me to be an accountability mechanism. I think maybe at first when they enter into the relationship, they think that they're having these calls, so I'm going to hold them accountable. Eventually, they'll realize I'm just asking a whole lot of questions. And if we're building this circle of accountability well, we're building an accountability between team members because one is going to be really dependent on another successful metric, and so forth and so on. No different than, sales is not going to get their functional metric completed unless marketing does their job really, really well. And by the way, those are the best arguments ever when sales and marketing argue about, I'm giving you enough leads. Yeah, but they're not quality leads. No, your conversion rate is terrible. And, that's when I know that we're building a circle of accountability. Now, I love seeing that with, a customer success metric as they're supposed to deliver leads back to sales, or, sales has got everything into production and production is not getting it out the door fast enough. Therefore, the cash metric gets broken because we can't invoice. And the CEO is sitting back going, I love watching you guys argue about these metrics, because now they're holding each other accountable. And we don't have this guy at the top cracking the whip going, come on, everybody get their jobs done. Everybody's asking everybody else to get their jobs done.
And there's a fine line there, isn't there? As those conversations happen, as they unfold, if it is a constructive debate, a constructive dialogue, then that's awesome. They are then holding each other to account. But if it gets into finger pointing and blame, then first of all, we probably haven't got a cohesive leadership team. And secondly, it's actually destructive. And they should have had that conversation previously. But the fact that they haven't confirms that it's not a functional, cohesive leadership team.
Well, it's interesting when you read, I just reread the M Game, and some of Shannon's things where she says, wow, Shannon, you're really dumping a lot of systems on me all at once. There's checks and balances as we go through these systems. And, I'll refer back to my comment earlier about the A-player senior leadership team. We cannot have that circle of accountability. We could have all the metrics in place, and have arguments and fights and dysfunction if we have the A-player senior leadership team with Trust 2.0 in place. Then we can have these really constructive circle of accountability debates about where actually is the problem, where is the bottleneck that we're facing. Is it in marketing? Is it in sales? Is it in conversion? And those are the best conversations that senior leaders can have, because we'll get outside of accountability and start getting into more strategic discussions about delivering the long-term goal.
Now, if you're listening or watching into this podcast and you're getting any insights about what accountability is for you, then pop them in the comments, because I'd love to hear from the listeners and viewers what they think accountability is. Have we mentioned something that is different to your understanding of accountability? So if you're a CEO listening into this, you might be wondering, well, how do I get accountability established, built into my team? Damian, how do you go about doing that in your practice?
I was working on that today with a client in the US, and I think one of the most important things that we can get in place when we start, working towards senior leadership teams and I guess metrics and accountabilities is to get the scorecards in place. Having a clear understanding about what the role is from a functional accountability standpoint, a competency standpoint, and then being able to clearly measure those functional accountabilities that with metrics that completely relate to the accountabilities. And, the conversation was good. It got great when we started linking with cascading metrics, because I always start this with the sales team, and it's really easy to link a sales team with cascading metrics. You go, oh, here's this geography, here's this geography, here's this geography. Oh, they're going to all flow up to the sales leader, and the sales leader will never have to really update their metrics as long as everybody else is updating it. Watching that happen, because nobody on a team that is involved with cascading metric wants to turn their team leader's metrics yellow by A, not updating it, or B, not asking for help when they actually need help. Driving that accountability down with a tool like cascading metrics is so easy to do. And today we did it in a number of functionalities. the majority of the functionalities and the cascading metrics that we put together, it looks like a Christmas tree when we're all done, they flow up to the KFFM. So now the person who's actually like 2 or 3 or 4 levels away from that key metric in the KFFM, if they don't update or they're not successful, is going to turn a key function flow map metric yellow and then maybe red. And it's so great to watch what can happen with this person who goes, oh, what do I have to do with the company anyway? And all of a sudden they've turned one of the main metrics of the entire company to yellow or to red. So I think cascading metrics is, we've always used them in sales teams. To get them to be used at a very high level in the other teams is amazing for connecting and driving accountability.
That's one of the first steps, the first actions that you take to get accountability into a leadership team. I think I agree. Now, if you're listening and KFFM isn't a term you're familiar with, that's the key function flow map. We'll pop a picture of that up on screen. Now, I was with a leadership team recently, and I just started working with them in November. And before I do a check-in with the leadership team, I always speak to the CEO. This was a couple of days before the session, and the CEO said to me, well, Ged, you've got them all running around, getting their numbers together, and the chatter and the talk in the leadership team is amazing. I've never really seen action like this. No one wants to be amber and no one wants to be red. And yeah, they're talking to each other. This has been such a simple but profound change in the leadership team, pretty much overnight, over a few weeks. And I often ask the question, or 3 questions actually, what should we count? What can we count? What are we counting? Because there's things out there that you maybe should count, but you're not able to count yet. And there's things out there that you should and could count that you can't yet because you haven't got the systems and processes in place. And that's often what I see quite early on. Leadership teams are saying, well, we know we need to be counting this, but we just can't get the data together, or we can't get the data easily and fast enough to actually want to count it every day. So I agree with you, getting that metric flow into the leadership team is a really good way to start building accountability. You also mentioned scorecards, which I just want to step back to a moment, because scorecards are one of the most powerful things of the Metronomics Growth Operating System. And it is probably the simplest implementation of a performance management system I've ever seen. Now, you may be paying many, many tens or even hundreds of thousands for a performance management system, and there's a much simpler one built in Metronomics already. So getting those scorecards in place, starting with the CEO and then starting to cascade down to all the leadership team and then down there. So you've got clarity around metrics, you've got clarity around priorities, you've got clarity around functions. You've even got clarity around living the core values, all built within these scorecards. That's really the starting point to getting accountability into a leadership team.
I will not leave a kickoff without going, and your homework is your scorecard. And it's so fun when they go, but I can't do my metric unless my people get their metrics. I'm like, that's called cascading metrics. Or how about this, cascading accountability?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, I start it right away because we as coaches will do functional accountability almost every session where, we're working either quarterly or annual with a team. I always check in on functional accountability. Even in the kickoff, I think that is one of the most clarifying things we do. We go, okay, who owns marketing? And then, 3 hands go up and you go, I don't think 3 people own marketing. So when I do that and we get some clarity, it usually takes half hour to find out who owns what all the way down the system and what they actually think functions are. It's fun when they go, oh, this is a function. I go, what are the metrics that go with that? And they go, oh, that one doesn't have metrics. It's probably not a function then. But I show up on day 2. Homework on day 2 is always for them to suggest what the widget is for that function and then what the fiscal is for that function. Just a high level widget and fiscal. So now I have a widget with a balancing fiscal metric. And it's really fun to watch them go, well, I can't be accountable for that because if I'm accountable for that, then I'm really going to need that guy over there to do his job. Like, yes, you really will. and you might hold them accountable.
Yeah, but they don't report to me, so they need to report to me. No, they don't. You just need to lead. You just need to lead.
We need Team Trust 2.0, where you can go, I'm going to call Ged up today because he's not passing on that domino that I really need, and mine won't fall without his. And the CEO is just looking back on, thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Early on, I often get the comment, well, I might be accountable for that number, but I can't get it. So I get that number from finance, so surely they should be accountable. No. They might give you the number. You're accountable for going to get it. And never, ever, ever walk into that room and tell me, finance didn't give me that number. No, you didn't go get that number.
Or you didn't go in the software or someone else's software to get that number. Yeah. I know you've heard me say this before, but I have one brilliant client who, they had accounting software, they had sales software, they probably had a project management software, Jira or something of the likes. And he goes, oh, we already have our software. About 6 months in, he goes, I have to look at so many softwares to find out how it's going. And I went, and you probably don't understand half of them or who's in there. He goes, I drew a diagram. So he's got this diagram and it's 4 or 5 softwares outside this sort of spokey looking wheel, and NGS softwares in the middle. And he goes, see, this is the hub. This is the single source of truth that I need. I'm like, that's brilliant. Mind if I steal that? And by the way, his results are outstanding.
Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, and even if you're not, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons and the bell. The bell will let you know when there's another episode just been released. A lot of people think accountability is more around execution, so the day-to-day, the things, the activities that need to get done day-to-day. But it's actually much bigger than that. It's much broader than that. How about we take a step back and look at how accountability plays into the big picture, into strategy, into the long term? Damian, I know you do a lot of work with your clients on that. Take us through your approach there.
We have the whole waterfall diagram where we take our 10-year goal and then we look at that and we bring it down to, say, a 3 HAG, that 3-year highly achievable goal. Then there's a 1 HAG. What are we going to get done in year 1? And, go 90 days and then go to tomorrow. The best part about 3 HAG is that it is a strategic execution system. So if we say we're going to build this strategy and we're going to go to this place because it really matters to our core customer, we can make all our numbers, our metrics true at the 3-year mark, and we've planned that all out. We need to, milestone out the building of this differentiated strategy, this unique place in the market, milestone by milestone, through a 12-quarter set of swim lanes. Therefore, we're going to be looking at that from not only a 90-day point of view, quarter by quarter, but these are only milestones. These milestones probably have a number of strategic priorities that will need to be completed to make the milestone true. So now, rather than write a strategy and go, look, here's this big dusty book up on a shelf, and we'll look at that once a year, and it'll be amazing, and we'll focus on our strategy. We have determined through a series of analysis why we're going to go to a particular place, what it is that's important, and when we're going to do it to build this differentiated place in the market. And we're going to put it on a 3-year quarter by quarter map and say what needs to be done when. So we might have a dusty book up on a shelf, but we have a plan for accomplishing what and when. And my favorite part about thinking about swim lanes is, those old cornflake puzzles you used to get in the cereal box and you had to move the square around to make a picture. There's only one free square. In the swim lanes, we try to leave as many free squares as we can and keep the milestones really high level so that we know if we have a milestone that's 3 quarters out, we have to start representing the completion of that milestone in our day-to-day right now. So I'm not just working on an annual number or a quarterly number. I'm working on positioning the company to be in a unique position 3 years from now, and a position that really matters to the people we're trying to serve, so that we make sure that the numbers that we have put in our 3 HAG are true.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've connected everybody executionally to a strategy.
You have aligned and joined strategy and execution. A lot of people see swim lanes and they see them just as a 36-month or a 3-year execution plan. It's not that. Why is that?
Wow. This could go on for a long time, Jed.
We've got all the time in the world.
If you do the proper analysis around an attribution framework and find out who you're competing against and what the attributes of the market are, to make sure that we are not competing to be the best, we are competing to be unique. And that unique position truly matters to the core customer, where they would pay a premium to do business with us. Then what we're saying in this analysis, we do these things well. We will own this white space. We will own that space on the attribution framework, and we will be top of market in the offering we are making to solve our core customer's problem. This is so unique to Metronomics. Lots of people talk about it, but nobody talks about the step-by-step methodology to get you there.
Yeah.
We do this, and it's fun because what I love is, I have customers that have come in from all kinds of different, as you know, I don't know what most of my customers actually do. But I know they're all in business, and I know that what we're doing is not unique to a particular kind of business. It is specific to all types of business. So I love watching the light bulbs go on. Somebody goes, "Oh, you don't know anything about our business." I said, "Yes, but we as Metronomics know about business. And what we're going to do is take you through an analysis to position yourself where what you do to solve the problem that you're solving in the marketplace matters to somebody. They're going to buy you at a premium. They're going to talk about you like there's no tomorrow, and they're going to find other people that like the position that you have taken. And we're going to stay away from our competitors so that we're not competing on stuff like price, where we're just racing to the bottom to see who can become a commodity first." I love this whole part about Metronomics because what it gets you into, and what it gets all our coaches into, is this mindset of strategic thinking based on our clients' offerings. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. And this crafting strategy is an incredibly powerful part of Metronomics, because it's the only framework I know out there that actually has a process to craft strategy. Now, some people think strategy is a creative process. Well, it is, but there's a science behind it as well. And if you follow that process, you can actually come out with a strategy that you have confidence in, because you've worked through it, you've looked at your white space, you understand the market and your competitors, and you've defined those 3 to 5 differentiators that, when interconnected and when dependent upon each other, is going to position you where no one else can touch you. And the next step there is, how do we bring those differentiators to life? Because they might not be completely in place yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the swim lanes do.
Yeah, well, you said something so important there. I almost want to interrupt you and bring you back.
Please do.
Because you said confidence.
Mm.
Now, I want you to think that the entire company is in a state of non-confidence. How good do you think they're going to be at executing?
Terribly, because they'll go in any direction.
They won't believe in what they're doing. Well, if we can get the entire company into a state of full confidence, and then we start dividing up what it is that has to be done down to the quarter, to the 30-day mark, and go, this is an important domino that we cannot move forward on our 3-year strategy unless you tip this one over in 30 days. Then we can tip the next one over. And they go, wow, that's a great strategy, and it's depending on me right now.
And I think most companies, when they get clear on those differentiators, now they're going to know that some of them are pretty well developed. Now, so that swim lane might be empty or have nothing for the first 2 years, which means you can then focus on other differentiators. And there's probably one differentiator that is either just been started, it's pretty nascent, or it is nowhere near enough developed enough to be able to be seen as a true differentiator in the market. So there's going to be a lot of work to do that. So that swim lane might have 3, 4, 5 milestones on it, but it's the milestones that we're talking about, not the activities. Yeah, it's the milestones we need to achieve. Now, we have in Metronomics, there's a 1-to-1 mapping between differentiators and swim lanes. There's different schools of thoughts about accountability for differentiators and swim lanes. I never get my clients to assign accountability to differentiators and swim lanes. For me, that is the one place where we break the rule that more than one person could be accountable. For me, the whole leadership team is accountable for the differentiators in the swim lanes. How about in your practice?
2 points I'll make there. And just for the people who are listening in, they go, we have this differentiator and we have this differentiator. Remember, it's only a truly unique space if the differentiators are interdependent. If you just have a differentiator, somebody's going to copy it. If you have a set of differentiators, it gets so unique and it gets so hard to copy. On the accountability in the swim lanes, I do assign, and then the question comes up, oh, I'm accountable for that swim lane. No, you're not. You are accountable to bring it up at meetings and making sure that if we see a milestone out, I don't know, 3 quarters from now, and you know it's going to be, 270 days to complete that milestone, you need to bring it up now. We can't bring it up later on. And as I work through this accountability, one of the things that I really try to, I guess, push numbers wise on my head of company is that EBITDA is a number that specifically says if we're on track, that our strategy is also on track. We have said we're going to do these things to get to this number. And the other number I love for the head of company to hold is the engagement number of his overall team. So now we have happy people making lots of money. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're happy when you go to work, you're probably going to do a better job. However, that EBITDA number holds the CEO to making sure that the strategy is on track. He might be able to make a short-term EBITDA number, but if the long-term milestones and the execution of those milestones are not on track, EBITDA will start to fall off because we have gone down the wrong path. We have checked the boxes and the strategy is not the right thing. That's okay, because with the amount of iterations that we go through in Metronomics, as long as the lanes are alive and well and somebody's bringing them up, and the CEO has overall accountability for strategy measured by EBITDA, we will constantly be having strategic conversations in the meetings that then get poured down to executionability and accountability.
So I think what we're seeing is that accountability goes across the whole leadership team, across the whole business. You can't extract it from that.
Once you get the circle of accountability going, and then each functional leader gets their own circle of accountability going in their next teams, you almost become an outcast very quickly because it becomes a culture of accountability. And either you're in bragging about your successes, like I gave it, I passed it on to Ged, he's going to do amazing now. Or you're going, wow, I don't accomplish anything. I don't know if I belong here. Maybe you don't sometimes. Some people are in the wrong seats.
And how does that feel? Very uncomfortable.
When you have that culture of accountability, it feels pretty bad when you're not in.
Yeah, and that's when people reach for the eject button.
Yeah, and that's okay. They might as well free up their own future because it's better if they're in a spot where they can be happy too.
There's no such thing as a bad person. It's just a person that's not in the right seat or in the right business.
Agreed.
So over the podcast, we've seen that accountability goes right the way across the business, from functional accountability, metrics, priorities, meeting accountability, and accountability around decisions. But we've also seen that accountability goes beyond that. It goes up to strategy. And if we're not applying accountability over the long-term view of the business, then we've missed a trick. Accountability is not just about now. It's also into the future. It's also into the big picture. I think we've done the topic of accountability justice today, Damian. So thanks so much for the chat. I'm always like talking to you. We wouldn't still be talking every week after nearly 10 years if we didn't enjoy our chats. Damian, if someone wants to contact you or they want to find out more about you, how would they go about that?
Pretty easy to find me on LinkedIn. Not a lot of Damian Byrnes around there that are Metronomics coaches, or feel free to contact me through Metronomics in general in their contact information.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Well, that brings us to a close for today. But as always, we'll speak next week, Damian.
We will indeed. Probably about accountability.
Probably. Tip Top is brought to you by Metronomics.
To find out more about Metronomics and how this proven 20-year-old system will save you time and money as you grow up your business,
visit metronomics.com. That is metronomics.com.
Share your thoughts on today's episode in the comments and suggest topics you'd love us to explore the next time.
Also search for Metronomics in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else that great podcasts are found.